After finishing his military service, the young man moves near his college and starts tutoring to pay for his daily life. While meeting many students, he remembers one girl who lives in a massive and luxurious apartment complex. Walking up to the door, he presses the buzzer and calls out to let his student know that her teacher has arrived. A cute girl named Ji-hai immediately opens the door with a huge smile and greets her favorite tutor. He started teaching her back in middle school, and she was always an amazing student who got the best grades. Although she is perfect, the teacher feels worried because her parents are never home and only leave sticky notes. After finishing another successful lesson, they pack up and he praises her for doing such a great job. The young girl suddenly gets very shy and asks if he has any free time to hang out after their class is done. Blushing, the girl asks if he wants some cake before leaving because she always gets lonely very easily. Seeing her cute reaction, the tutor agrees, and she immediately gets super excited to serve the treat. While eating sweet treats together, she happily shares stories about her school life with a bright smile. Feeling sympathy for her situation, he starts visiting more often, and this routine continues for over 1 year. Suddenly, the mother calls to say that the lessons will officially end by the conclusion of the month. Although the news is disappointing for him, the young girl looks completely devastated by the sudden parting. Walking away, he blames himself for being a bad teacher, even though she completed every single assignment. Looking closely at his face, she notes his sad expression, but he quickly tries to hide his disappointment. To make up for the sad news, the tutor offers to show the young girl around his college campus for their last lesson. Hearing that her mom already approved the trip, the excited girl instantly jumps with joy and agrees to the fun plan. Under the beautiful clear sky, the two finally meet up at the university and begin their special tour together. Posing happily with a peace sign, the adorable student makes sure to capture this unforgettable moment on her phone. Walking around the massive campus, she looks completely amazed by how huge and impressive everything feels. Seeing her high energy, the young man smiles and asks if she wants to grab a quick bite to eat. Taking her to a highly famous pizza spot, he watches her happily chew on a delicious slice of hot brick oven pizza. Cheering with joy, the blushing girl declares that her favorite teacher is truly the absolute best. Gentle words follow as he sincerely thanks the quiet teenager for being such an amazing student over the past year. He then tells her to contact him again once she turns 20 so he can treat her to another delicious meal. With a bright smile, she happily accepts the sweet promise before they joyfully clink their cold drinks together. Soon a luxurious white car pulls up near them, and a voice politely thanks the tutor for the wonderful day. Standing beside her daughter, the elegant mother politely thanks the hard-working tutor for all his efforts. With a warm smile, he replies that the clever teenager is so smart that teaching her was never a struggle. The mother happily expresses her gratitude before gently suggesting they head back because it is getting late. Waving her hand high in the air, the happy student promises that they will definitely meet again in the future. Standing under the evening lights, the young man waves back with a gentle smile to say his final goodbye. Looking back on those days, the college student realizes that choosing to tutor was the best decision of his life. After graduating from university, he faces a tough time while looking at another cold job rejection on his phone. Sitting alone on a park bench, the graduate feels highly stressed about what he should actually do for a living. During this difficult time, a sudden memory of teaching happy kids back in his tutoring days pops into his mind. Remembering how much he enjoyed helping students succeed, the young man finds his true path in life. This realization leads him directly to the doors of a popular private academy to start his professional career. Now working as a real instructor, he stands in front of a large whiteboard to teach a complex math lecture. Looking at his passionate teaching style, the kids in class happily listen and understand the topic easily. Even though the job has some tough challenges, the deep sense of achievement makes him feel incredibly satisfied. Having started with no real dreams, the motivated teacher now aims to become the most famous star instructor. Feeling very happy with his current life, the hardworking instructor heads home to rest after a busy day of teaching. Suddenly, a text arrives on his phone from a successful student who just got accepted into a great college. Looking at the screen, the young man realizes that children born in 2006 are already starting university. While thinking about the passing years, the handsome teacher stops when a major realization hits his mind. He suddenly remembers his old student Ji-hae and wonders if she has also grown up enough to enter college. The tutor wants to know which school she got into but thinks it might be too awkward to ask after 4 long years. Just as those deep thoughts fill his mind, a new message notification pops up on his phone and shocks him. Looking down at the screen, he cannot believe his own eyes when he sees the name of his former student on the chat list. In the text, the young girl asks if he remembers their past promise and begs him to meet her at a subway station. As beautiful white snow starts to fall down from the sky, he quickly makes his way to the designated meeting spot. Walking through the cold streets, he warmly recalls the sweet promise he made to treat her to a meal once she grew up. Arriving at the busy station, the excited teacher sends a message to let her know that he is waiting for her. He wonders how much she has changed over the past 4 years and imagines her looking like a beautiful, mature lady. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out his name from behind, causing the young man to turn around in surprise. Turning around, the young man gets shocked when a girl gasps in disbelief that he actually showed up at the station. He notices her long dark hair and a bunch of stylish piercings all over her ear. Standing in the freezing cold is his former student who looks completely different with a goth outfit and many piercings. The confused instructor nervously greets her and realizes she is indeed his cute middle school student. Looking down at the ground, she sadly apologizes for not being able to keep their sweet promise. To cheer her up, he proudly talks about his new job as a popular instructor at a private academy. His happy mood instantly vanishes when the young girl reveals that she dropped out of high school. Taking a slow step forward, she admits that she wanted to become a great adult but ended up feeling pathetic. Tears run down her face as she suddenly raises her voice and blames him for changing her life back then. Getting completely flustered, the worried teacher begs her to calm down as she continues to point the finger at him. Before he can even process the situation, she runs forward and wraps her arms tightly around his waist while crying. Crying heavily, the young girl declares that the handsome teacher has to take full responsibility for her life. Hearing this sudden confession, the confused man has absolutely no idea what actually happened to her over the years. Even though the situation is extremely weird, he can clearly see that she desperately needs someone to lean on right now. Looking up with teary eyes, the quiet girl sincerely apologizes for dumping all of her heavy problems on him out of nowhere. She admits that she remembers his sweet promise, but she could not help reaching out because her life became a complete mess. Blushing deeply, the teenager adds that she always knew her beloved mentor would never just toss her aside in her time of need. Suddenly, a loud growling sound comes from her stomach, which completely ruins the emotional moment and leaves them in silence. To break the awkward silence, the generous tutor takes her out to a local restaurant where she immediately orders a ton of meat. Hugging her hot food bowl, the goth girl lets out a happy sigh and says that she finally feels alive again after eating a meal. Watching her finish the massive feast, the young man decides it is finally time to ask what actually happened to her. Pointing at her large suitcase, he asks if she ran away from home, but she quickly denies the accusation with a frantic look. With a nervous smile, she confesses that she got kicked out of her rented room, leaving the poor teacher completely speechless. Ji-hai gets incredibly defensive and shouts that she had very good reasons for everything that happened. Looking down at the table, she tries to figure out the best way to explain her long story to him. The troubles began the moment she turned 20 and decided to carry out her plan to live a fully independent life. Since she only knew how to study, she struggled to keep any part-time job and constantly got yelled at by angry bosses. As the rent deadline approached, she checked her bank account only to find less than $4 left in her balance. Her anxious landlord started sending multiple polite messages asking for the money before warning her about the security deposit. Eventually, the old landlord decided to visit her room directly and knocked on the door to see if she was home. Opening the door, she found the poor teenager hiding on the floor under a big blanket like a scared little animal. Feeling sympathy, the old lady offered to waive the entire monthly rent if the girl joined her at church twice a week. Although she felt incredibly relieved by this generous deal, a massive problem quickly appeared to ruin her peace of mind. That is because the giant building her landlord took her to did not look like any regular place of worship at all. The young girl nervously pointed out that the place felt like a sketchy cult, but the lady quickly tried to defend it. Suddenly, she was pushed right to the front of a massive stage to be welcomed as a brand new believer of their group. A creepy leader then shoved a microphone in front of her face and asked the clueless girl to share her deep thoughts. Standing awkwardly on the stage with a microphone, the nervous girl struggles to find the right words to say. She suddenly shouts that God is dead, which completely shocks the leader and everyone else in the room. Because of her wild speech, she immediately gets a notice to pack up her bags and leave the apartment for good. The tutor feels glad she escaped, but wonders why she is dressed so lightly in the middle of a freezing winter. After hearing she sold her winter coat for food, the young man connects the dots and realizes she is fully homeless. When he asks where she will sleep tonight, she just stares at him with massive sparkly eyes instead of answering. The girl cutely begs to sleep on a small corner of his floor, but the shocked teacher tells her that is out of the question. While he offers to pay for a motel room, the teenager quickly shakes her head because she is too scared to stay alone. He tries to explain that a guy and a girl living together is complicated, but she complains about having to sleep outside. Knowing she needs real help, the worried mentor suggests contacting her parents to see if they can solve this mess. Her expression instantly turns dark as she coldly replies that those people were never her actual parents from the start. Sensing a scary and intense vibe from her, the silent instructor quickly regrets bringing up her family in the conversation. The girl softly apologizes for her sudden outburst and explains she cannot return to her toxic family home. Seeing her pain, the teacher feels deeply guilty about leaving her to sleep alone in the freezing cold. Gently grabbing his hand, she desperately promises to never become a burden if he just lets her stay. The young man stares at her in silence while trying to make a logical decision. He still says no and explains that a guy and a girl living together would be way too awkward. Hearing his harsh rejection, the poor teenager looks completely crushed and loses all hope. She suddenly stands up to thank him for the warm meal and walks straight out into the snowy night. The confused instructor runs after her because she forgot to take her large suitcase with her. Stopping in her tracks, the girl turns around and coldly declares that she is just going to die. He gets incredibly angry and scolds her for talking about ending her life so casually. Looking at her cold face, the young man listens as she declares she would rather die than return to that house. Finding himself completely defeated by her sad words, the worried mentor finally agrees to let her stay at his place. While waiting for the bus, he scolds her for choosing cold noodles instead of hot soup in this freezing weather. Watching his former student shiver in the cold, he realizes she is both mentally unstable and extremely freezing. Moving closer, the kind instructor gently wraps his own warm winter coat around her shaking shoulders to protect her. Even though she worries about him being cold, the stubborn man claims he can easily handle the freezing winter wind. She suddenly asks to hug him until the bus arrives, which completely flusters him as she tries to grab his waist. After surviving the chaotic bus ride, they finally arrive at his quiet apartment building to escape the cold storm. Sitting down on his comfortable couch, the young tutor immediately starts to regret his incredibly hasty decision. Meanwhile, a loud splashing sound echoes from the bathroom, while the young man worries about their strange living situation. Inside the warm shower, the goth girl happily hums a song while enjoying the hot water after a long freezing day. Nervously biting his nails, the worried instructor wonders if they can actually survive living under the same roof. After she finishes washing up, he decides to ask her about her actual plans for the near future. Sitting on the floor in clean clothes, the confused girl blushes and repeats the question in a cute voice. Crossing his arms, he quickly warns her that she cannot just mooch off him for the rest of her life. Smiling brightly, the enthusiastic girl proudly presents a colorful sign showing her master plan to make money. Her first brilliant idea is to buy high-end gaming gear so she can farm virtual gold to sell for cash. The second option involves buying online tickets and reselling them to desperate fans for an easy profit. For her final and most extreme option, she wants to take all her remaining cash directly to the racetrack. Losing his mind at her ridiculous suggestions, the angry tutor loudly tells her to get a normal job instead. She sadly explains that every workplace rejected her, so she just wants to rest while figuring things out slowly. Jihai shyly holds up 3 fingers and asks if she can just stay for about 3 years. Yeon Ho pushes up his glasses and gives her a strict limit of only 2 weeks to find a real job and leave. As night falls over the quiet apartment, the dark room finally becomes completely silent. The exhausted young girl immediately falls fast asleep while holding her cute stuffed bunny toy. Looking down at her peaceful sleeping face, the teacher realizes she must have had a truly exhausting day. Clutching his pillow, he starts to deeply reflect on the emotional things she told him earlier. He recalls her crying face and wonders if he said something wrong to her in the past to cause such resentment. Lying down on his bed, the anxious man struggles to sleep as his mind continues to spin with worried thoughts. The next morning arrives with bright sunlight shining over the tall city apartment building. Sitting up in bed, the tired teenager lets out a giant yawn while hugging her plush toy tightly. She gets startled when a familiar voice suddenly calls out to her from across the room. Her handsome host stands near the door in his work clothes and tells her that he is heading out for the day. He blushes slightly while mentioning he left some of her favorite squid snacks in the fridge for her to enjoy. A loud clicking sound echoes through the hallway as the front door locks after he leaves. Peeking out from behind the wall, the young girl slowly looks around the empty apartment to explore. Eating her meal, the young girl notes that her kind host seems a little more stiff around her lately. While washing the dishes in the kitchen, she resolves to never become a burden to the person who saved her. Looking at her phone, she realizes she needs to pull her own weight and find a way to make some money. 11 days pass in a flash, and the poor girl lies in bed crying about being a completely useless freeloader. When the young man brings home some delicious sushi, she dramatically cries that a parasite like her does not deserve it. Chewing on her food, she explains that she sent out dozens of resumes, but only got a single interview offer. Feeling curious, the concerned teacher wonders what kind of jobs his former student has actually been applying for. She nervously admits she only wants places with good heating and cooling, which makes him want to kick her out. Trying to be helpful, the patient instructor tells her to just stay calm and relax when she goes to her next interview. Smiling with renewed hope, the motivated girl promises that she will definitely get hired and make him proud. The scene shifts to the busy academy building, where the teachers gather for their regular weekly meeting. Sitting quietly at the table, the young instructor listens as the team prepares to go over the new notices. A beautiful white-haired teacher explains that they need to confirm who will attend the upcoming parent meeting. She adds that their grading assistant is leaving next week when a sudden loud notification sound breaks the silence. Dozens of loud alerts start ringing from his phone, causing the embarrassed man to quickly apologize to his coworkers. Looking down at his phone, the teacher gets absolutely shocked to see 87 unread messages. His former student sent a massive flood of desperate texts explaining that she failed her job interview. The worried girl begs him not to kick her out of the apartment as the chat screen fills up with her name. Meanwhile, back at the apartment building, the lonely teenager is starting to feel completely miserable. Throwing her phone onto the cold floor, she sinks deep into a dark state of sadness. Hugging her legs tightly, the poor girl worries about what will happen to her in just 2 days. Suddenly, a loud notification sound echoes through the quiet room and makes her jump in surprise. Her eyes instantly light up with joy when she sees that her host finally sent a reply. However, the quick text message simply says that he is too busy today and will write her back later. The devastating response feels incredibly cold and sends a painful shiver straight down her spine. Staring blankly at the screen, she becomes absolutely convinced that the kind man is totally sick of her. Realizing she has nobody else to talk to, the sad teenager decides to look for comfort online. She logs into her secret social media account to post about how useless she feels after her rejection. Lying on her stomach, the lonely girl desperately hopes that some random internet stranger will say something kind. Her heart skips a beat when a bright blue notification icon suddenly pops up on the display. The online supporter writes a super sweet comment to encourage the depressed teenager after her job rejection. Clutching her phone, the happy girl blushes while reading the comforting message from her favorite internet friend. Back at the academy, the beautiful team leader notices that the young teacher has been leaving incredibly early lately. Nervously rubbing his neck, he quickly lies about having some busy personal matters to take care of at home. Drinking her warm coffee, the strict team leader also reminds him to keep his phone on silent during his classes. She then mentions that they are desperately looking for a new grading assistant to help out next week. Stopping in his tracks, the young teacher suddenly gets a brilliant idea and calls out to his boss. Meanwhile, the poor girl cries in bed until a sudden loud clicking sound from the front door startles her. Wearing her glasses, she quickly greets her host, who looks a bit tired after a long day of teaching. Twiddling her fingers, the nervous teenager sadly apologizes for failing yet another job interview today. Staring at her with a serious expression, the young man asks what she plans to do if she cannot find a job. He then suggests that she could come work directly with him at the academy as their new grading assistant. Hearing his sudden offer, the young girl freezes in pure shock and wonders if she heard him correctly. She wonders if he is really offering her a grading assistant position at his actual workplace. The young man explains that the part-time job only involves simple chores like photocopying and cleaning up the rooms. Looking at her with a gentle smile, he asks if she would actually be interested in taking the offer. Instead of getting excited, the silent girl looks down and hesitates, which makes him wonder why she seems so quiet. He quickly adds that he is not trying to force her if she truly does not want to do it. The worried teenager suddenly grabs his sleeve to stop him from taking back the sudden offer. Blushing deeply, she nervously asks about the hourly wage, and he replies that it pays 16,000 won. Later that night, the teacher decides to give her a mock grading session first to see how well she can do the task. Although she starts out calm, she quickly loses focus and her concentration completely plummets. Shaking her legs excessively, the poor girl looks incredibly restless and filled with deep anxiety. She complains about feeling dizzy, while the confused instructor tells her she just needs to mark the papers. The teenager sadly chuckles and calls herself a piece of trash who cannot even handle a simple job. Holding her head in frustration, she declares that she still has to try her absolute best anyway. Looking at her shaking hands, the young man remembers how bright and clever she used to be back in middle school. The girl suddenly calls his name, which breaks his train of thought and makes him look up in surprise. Holding her legs tightly, she asks if he also thinks she is completely pathetic, just like her mother used to say. With tears streaming down her face, she explains how her mother constantly compared her current state to her past. Looking directly into his eyes, the crying girl asks him if she truly looks pathetic to him right now. Stepping forward, the concerned teacher firmly grabs her shoulders and tells her that she is wrong. He gently reassures her that he has never once thought of her as pathetic since they met again. Hearing his warm words of support, the emotional girl blushes and slowly nods her head in agreement. The instructor wonders if his past compliment somehow caused massive trouble for her over the years. He quickly reminds her that she does not have to take the academy job if it feels too hard or stressful. Despite the difficulty, the determined girl stutteringly insists that she really wants to try the job. The instructor points to the test papers and asks if she wants it just because the hourly wage is high. Blushing deeply, she quickly replies that the money is only the second reason why she wants this job. She looks up shyly and confesses that working at the academy means she can finally spend more time with him. The confused young man wonders why she wants to be with him so much, but she struggles to find the right words. While playing with her fingers, she mentions that being around him always changes how she feels. She looks down and admits that her mind finally feels completely at ease whenever they are together. Staring back at her in silence, the teacher is completely speechless after hearing her sweet confession. He eventually breaks the silence by warning her that her terrible grading speed will get her fired instantly. The instructor adds that they are only accepting applications until this Friday, so they do not have much time. Leaning forward, he suggests they use the remaining days to practice focusing together, and she happily agrees. Soon day 3 of their intense training begins as they visit different study cafes to prepare her. Unfortunately, she still cannot focus on her papers, leaving the teacher incredibly disappointed by the lack of progress. Sitting across from her, he wonders if she is getting distracted by random thoughts while grading the homework. Squeezing a small toy, she admits that she gets too anxious about making a mistake and ruining everything. Squeezing her plush toy, she admits that her mind completely blanks out whenever she feels too anxious. Looking at her in silence, the teacher gently asks why she is so terrified of making a single error. She nervously replies that her mother always taught her that society would never forgive any mistakes. The young man reminds her that she ran away from home precisely because she hated their strict rules. He suggests that she should finally let go of those painful memories since she already escaped them. Smiling warmly, the kind instructor explains that everyone learns by making mistakes along the way. He then jokingly asks if he looks like a super scary person who would never tolerate a single flaw. To prove his point, he brings up the time she accidentally put MSG in his coffee and broke his expensive lotion. Blushing deeply, the teenager listens to his comforting words about what truly matters in life. He recalls how she later made him sweet coffee and left a cute note promising to replace his broken items. He concludes that having the right attitude to fix your mistakes is much more important than being perfect. Inspired by his kind words, the motivated girl promises to try grading the test papers one more time. Feeling a massive weight lift off her shoulders, she immediately starts working on the assignment. The young girl manages to focus on the task with incredible precision and grades the papers perfectly. Although she gets completely exhausted after 2 hours, she still managed to do an amazing job. The young instructor praises her hard work and decides to help her slowly blend back into society. Days pass quickly, and the big moment finally arrives as they stand together in front of the academy building. Before heading inside, the young man reminds her to use his special trick if she starts feeling too anxious. Turning around, he gets surprised to see the terrified girl crouching on the floor because she thinks it is impossible. The worried teacher calls her name out loud to quickly snap her out of her negative thoughts. Extending his hand, he gently tells the nervous teenager to just do her absolute best without feeling any heavy burden. Looking at his kind smile, the blushing girl holds his warm hand and gains the strength to stand back up. Entering the quiet building, the motivated girl tells herself to stay strong because her mentor worked so hard to help her. Her deep confidence instantly vanishes when she steps into the room and finally sees the interviewer. Sitting across from her is a strict woman who looks like she has absolutely no blood or tears. Standing inside the academy building, the nervous girl realizes that she has to face this terrifying interviewer. Looking down at her clipboard, the white-haired boss remembers that this is the person her coworker mentioned. Just the day before, the teenager held a book to build her confidence while asking if the director would interview her. Drinking his hot coffee, the young teacher explained that the high school team leader would probably do the job instead. He secretly knew that their boss only cared about playing golf and never actually bothered to show up for interviews. The anxious girl got even more terrified when her mentor told her to pray that she does not get the scary team leader. Back in the present room, the shivering teenager flinches when her name is suddenly called out by the quiet boss. The strict leader tells her to relax since the interview only consists of a few very simple questions about her past. Hearing that her chores will be easy, the young girl happily claims that she is extremely good at cleaning up rooms. The white-haired boss looks down and mentions that the young girl has zero experience working in an academy. She then asks about basic tasks like filing paperwork, and the nervous teenager admits she has never done those either. Looking at the quiet woman, the goth girl starts to worry that applying for this job was a massive mistake. Her heart races as she worries about failing yet another simple interview and getting kicked out of the apartment. The strict boss suddenly calls out her name, which snaps the terrified teenager back to reality. Instead of rejecting her, the boss suggests doing a paid trial shift today to see how well she can actually work. Meanwhile, inside a nearby classroom, the daily lectures finally end and the students get dismissed. The young instructor checks his phone and feels worried because his former student has not sent him any texts. Standing in the hallway, he wonders if everything went well since the girl is usually extremely loud. His train of thought is suddenly cut short when a familiar voice calls his name from down the hall. The boss explains that she gave the young girl a trial shift to test her grading and cleaning skills. Showing him some completed papers, the team leader notes that the new girl did a surprisingly meticulous job. When the teacher asks about her current location, the boss replies that the girl went to supervise the study room. The young man gets extremely shocked to hear this, because that specific classroom is currently full of troublemakers. The boss calmly explains that a good worker must also possess the leadership skills to keep the students in line. The boss explains that she wants to see if the new girl can handle 3 notorious troublemakers from a local high school. These 3 girls are famous for chatting constantly and ignoring every single warning from the staff members. They even drag students from other schools and busy instructors into their endless conversations. The worried teacher asks his boss if she is deliberately trying to make his former student fail. The white-haired leader calmly replies that this is just a perfect chance for her to prove her skills. He lets out a silent sigh because he knows those high schoolers are incredibly difficult to handle. Looking at the office clock, the strict boss decides it is finally time to go check on the classroom. The anxious young man immediately offers to walk with her so he can see what is happening. They quickly make their way down the quiet hallway of the academy to find the self-study room. He worries that his poor friend is probably getting completely bullied and overwhelmed by those loud girls. Within moments, they finally arrive right in front of the locked wooden door. Slowly opening the door, the quiet boss peeks inside to see how the new worker is managing. Her eyes suddenly open extremely wide as she freezes in complete disbelief at the scene. She quickly calls the young instructor over and tells him to take a look for himself. Peeking over her shoulder, the handsome teacher gets absolutely stunned by what is happening inside. Inside the room, the 2 troublemakers are actually reading their textbooks and studying quietly. The pleased boss whispers that they finally found the perfect worker that the academy always needed. Sweat drips down the student as the terrifying shadow of the goth girl looms menacingly right behind her. Sometime later, the young girl feels super happy when she receives her very first paycheck on her phone. Sitting next to her, the pleased young man congratulates her for finally escaping her unemployment status. While riding back home, the curious teacher asks if she can explain how she managed to handle those kids. He recalls that those 3 high school students always caused massive trouble and never listened to anyone. The proud teenager boasts that she simply used her intense charisma to make them behave themselves. Smiling at her, the instructor praises her and wonders if she finally found her actual calling in life. A few hours earlier, the nervous helper tried to politely ask the loud students to keep their voices down. The girls completely ignored her warning, which made the poor helper worry about failing her very first trial. She realized that failing this test would make it too embarrassing to ever face her favorite teacher again. The student looked totally confused when the desperate assistant begged her to please be quiet. She tried to instruct the loud girl to study, but the student confidently claimed she already finished everything. The troublemaker arrogantly tells the new assistant that taking a break in the study room is completely normal. She even suggests that the young girl should just relax and avoid taking her part-time job too seriously. Hearing their bold words, the nervous worker begins to tremble as she tries to find a way to make them listen. With tears welling up in her eyes, the desperate teenager suddenly begs the students to please be quiet for today. She starts sobbing loudly, which completely catches the 3 high school troublemakers off guard. Feeling incredibly awkward and guilty, the main troublemaker suddenly tells her friends to open their books. The other girls stare in shock as the crying assistant continues to hiccup loudly right behind them. They quickly apologize and promise to behave because they cannot bear to see their new supervisor cry like this. Later, the goth girl blushes with embarrassment while wondering how she can ever look at those students again. A full week passes quickly at the busy academy as the young helper tries her best to get used to the hard work. Another instructor calls her name and asks her to print out some important tests whenever she has free time. Carrying a heavy box of class materials, she politely confirms that she already handled her other daily tasks. Watching her from a distance, the proud teacher notes that she has adapted surprisingly well to the busy workplace. Even the strict white-haired team leader notices her progress and praises her for doing a great job with the files. Seeing how much she has grown in just a few days fills the kind young man with a deep sense of pride and happiness. The daily lessons finally end as the teacher dismisses his group and reminds everyone to do their homework. He rubs his sore neck after speaking through 3 consecutive lectures back-to-back and sighs. Suddenly, a loud click sound from the entrance catches his attention and makes him turn around. His former student enters the room with a broom to start cleaning up the messy area. She slowly shuts the door behind her, which makes the young man wonder why she is closing it. Before he can say a word, the crying girl suddenly runs forward and hugs him tightly to complain about the work. The panicked instructor tells her to let go because someone might easily walk in and see them together. Just as he speaks, 3 female students suddenly push the entryway open and freeze when they see the embrace. One of the teenagers smiles mischievously and asks about their current relationship status with a smirk. The other class members join in to tease their teacher because they find this whole situation highly suspicious. They begin to playfully interrogate him like detectives, asking how it felt to hug his pretty assistant. The trio jokes that he only has 2 minutes left to prepare his final defense before they judge him. To make the nosy kids stay quiet, the teacher offers to buy them delicious treats from a brand new bakery down the street. Getting in on the action, his pretty assistant cutely whispers that she also wants her favorite red bean buns. Later that night at the apartment, the young man decides it is finally time to establish some extremely strict house rules. He holds up 3 fingers and demands that she must always maintain a physical distance of 3 paces at the academy. The confused girl complains about the sudden boundary, but her stubborn mentor insists on keeping exactly this much space. He explains that they must hide their living situation, so nobody at their busy workplace gets suspicious of them. The teary teenager wonders who she can lean on during tough times, but he firmly says she must stand on her own. He reminds her that she is no longer a child and must finally graduate from this sort of highly dependent behavior. Feeling completely defeated by his stern lecture, the sad girl quietly promises to stay far away from him at work. The next day inside the faculty office, the worried teacher starts to feel incredibly guilty about his harsh words. While she works at the copier, the quiet teenager keeps staring directly at him instead of focusing on her task. Looking at her sad and lonely expression makes the young man realize that she actually looks a bit pitiful today. He firmly grabs his textbook and reminds himself that he cannot let his soft heart ruin her future growth. Convincing himself that this cold distance is for her own sake, the serious instructor walks away without looking back. Even though she tries to keep her distance, the girl's feet start moving toward her favorite teacher anyway. Suddenly, a loud voice interrupts the hallway as an angry parent arrives to demand a meeting with the teacher. The upset mother starts yelling about customer service and complains loudly about his busy lecture schedule. Before the situation can get any worse, the white-haired team leader steps in to protect her coworker. She calmly tells the parent to stop raising her voice before leading her away to a private room. Sitting inside, the teacher explains that the student simply lacks motivation instead of actual talent. The mother gets offended when he suggests private tutoring, since they cannot give the boy special treatment. Walking away, the exhausted instructor sighs and realizes he will never get used to dealing with entitled parents. The teacher tries to explain that the class guidelines are simply different from what the mother wants. Suddenly, a loud scream echoes as the angry parent freezes in absolute terror. She points a shaking finger directly behind him while stuttering about a creepy presence. Turning around slowly, the young man suddenly feels a freezing cold chill run down his spine. It turns out his former student is staring through the glass door with a terrifyingly dark expression. Terrified by the scary gaze, the rude parent quickly screams that she must leave immediately. She runs down the hallway in a massive panic, while the goth girl keeps glaring silently. The confused instructor turns around to face his helper, who is still standing right outside. When another worker calls her name, she instantly switches back to her incredibly cute and cheerful voice. Watching her sudden personality change, the shocked man realizes how truly scary she can actually be. Later that night, he tells the girl that dealing with difficult parents is strictly his own job. Standing quietly in front of him, the blushing teenager looks down at the floor with a sad face. He strictly orders her to stay out of teacher business from now on, and she tearfully agrees. Looking up shyly, she reaches into her pocket to pull something special out for him. She holds up a sweet red bean bun and admits that scaring the mean lady actually felt amazing. The young teacher holds the sweet snack and feels genuinely grateful for her kind gesture. Blushing deeply, the excited teenager suddenly steps forward and wraps her arms tightly around him to express her thanks. Squeezing her cheek, the flustered mentor immediately pushes her back and scolds her poor sense of physical distance. While he explains that hugging is way too much even at home, the annoyed girl complains that he is far too conservative. Pointing at a plush toy, the instructor suggests she hug the cute stuffed dog he won for her during their campus tour. The stubborn teenager claims she needs actual human warmth, which makes him realize she is far more unhinged than he thought. Holding up 3 fingers, the clever girl cutely asks if he can at least permit exactly 3 warm hugs every month. Letting out a tired sigh, the stubborn man says she can only have 1 single hug per month, which leaves her completely shocked. Crossing her arms, she complains that hugs are just casual greetings in America, but he simply tells her to go live there. Seeing her angry face, the young man suggests they just forget the whole deal, which instantly makes her regret her attitude. She quickly lunges forward for another tight embrace and declares she is using her monthly limit right this second. Looking down in defeat, the exhausted teacher realizes he cannot keep letting her get away with these chaotic antics forever. The cute assistant hugs him tightly and happily hopes that they can stay together forever. The next day at the academy, the strict instructor corners 3 trouble students who skipped their retest. The orange-haired girl nervously claims that they had to prepare a major group school project instead. Her dark-haired friend boldly smiles and loudly admits that she simply forgot all about the exam. The quiet girl with glasses brings up German laws to explain that she only wanted to protect their freedom. He lets out a sigh and decides to let them off with a warning since it is their very first offense. Walking down the quiet hallway with his coffee, he starts to wonder if he is being far too soft on the kids. He sighs deeply while realizing that the students are getting lazier with each passing lecture at the academy. Inside another classroom, the white-haired boss tells her students to open their textbooks to page 88. Hearing her scary tone, the terrified boys in the front row start sweating and shaking in pure fear. Looking into the next classroom, the young teacher realizes the other kids are extremely well behaved. He understands that only a truly remarkable person could achieve the rank of team leader. Later that night, dark clouds fill the sky over their quiet city apartment building. Coming home from work, the handsome host gets surprised to see that his guest is still awake. Suddenly, the big blanket starts moving as if something is hiding underneath it. The young man stares in total confusion and asks what she is trying to do. The teenager pops out and complains that she got scolded by the strict leader again today. She sadly explains that she accidentally printed the wrong test papers and ruined everything. The kind instructor tries to cheer her up by offering to go to a nice cafe tomorrow. He suggests that grabbing some delicious treats might make her feel much better. Hearing his sweet suggestion, the quiet girl softly thanks him for being so incredibly thoughtful. However, the blushing teenager says she would feel too guilty because she is already freeloading. The young man smiles warmly while realizing that his former student is slowly growing up. He tells her not to get too discouraged, and she obediently nods her head in agreement. Falling back onto the floor, the quiet girl hugs her toy and sinks back into deep thoughts. While the handsome mentor brushes his teeth, the sad teenager clutches a towel and looks completely downcast. Lying on the floor with her plush toy, she listens as he loudly orders her to get ready for some delicious food. The scene shifts to a tall city building under a bright sky where they head to find a nice local cafe. Chewing on a delicious slice of chocolate cake, the goth girl closes her eyes with joy and feels her energy return. She blushes while thanking the kind young man for treating her to such a sweet snack after her tough day at work. Looking closely at his former student, the curious teacher asks how she is adjusting to the new job at the academy. The teenager makes a highly dramatic face and warns him that their white-haired boss is incredibly terrifying. Drinking his hot tea, the confused instructor wonders if the team leader is actually that scary to work with. The girl points her finger and explains that their boss never shows any facial expressions to reveal her thoughts. Looking down nervously, she admits that not knowing what her supervisor thinks about her makes her feel very anxious. Her eyes widen as she worries that the strict woman might secretly hate her and think she is completely useless. The girl blushes in surprise when her mentor suddenly speaks up to reassure her with some gentle words. He smiles and says that she is actually adapting much better than he originally expected. The kind mentor adds that even the previous assistant made the exact same mistakes in the beginning. Hearing his sweet encouragement, a tiny happy smile slowly begins to form on the young girl's face. Ji-hai blushes and says it has been a long time since she could open up her heart and talk about her worries. The young girl adds that her beloved teacher was always the only person who actually listened to her stories. Looking at her, the mentor suddenly remembers how lonely she must have been when she was a middle school student. He then looks at her and gently asks if she has any other worries she wants to share. The kind instructor suggests they use their special cafe visit to just talk about whatever she wants. He believes that listening to her problems is an important duty to help her feel emotionally stable. While she happily finishes her sweet drink, the young man prepares to listen to her endless thoughts. The teenager suddenly starts ranting about everything from her short height to the expensive price of rent. Sweating from her non-stop talking, the exhausted man quickly excuses himself to go use the restroom. Walking out of the cafe room, he looks around to find the restroom on the 4th floor of the building. He stands near the elevator and presses the button to head upstairs for a quick break. Suddenly, a familiar voice from behind asks to ride the elevator with him. Hearing the words, the surprised teacher wonders where he has heard that specific voice before. Turning around, he gets completely shocked to see his beautiful white-haired boss standing right there. The nervous man politely greets his team leader while wondering why she is visiting this exact location today. Nervously peeking out, the white-haired boss says she will take the stairs instead and runs away. The young instructor stands there completely stunned by her incredibly awkward behavior. While washing his hands, the young man wonders why their professional relationship feels so weird. Staring at the building directory, he wonders if she actually finds him too uncomfortable to be around. Deeply confused, he worries that he might have done something wrong to upset his supervisor. Suddenly, a loud shout from behind snaps the handsome teacher right out of his deep thoughts. Walking up to him, his cute helper asks what he is thinking about with such a serious face. The young man simply smiles and tries to brush off her question to avoid worrying her. Seeing her cheerful reaction, he wonders if his boss also felt this same intense awkwardness. Meanwhile, the beautiful team leader lets out a tired sigh as she walks away. Stepping into the quiet elevator, the white-haired woman wonders if her coworker found her behavior strange. Clutching her black plastic bag, she tells herself that avoiding him was her only real option. With a serious expression, the quiet woman resolves to keep her secret fully hidden from everyone. Entering the academy building, the young teacher tries his best not to overthink his strange encounter. Just as the elevator doors begin to close, a familiar voice calls out, and the white-haired boss steps inside. Standing side by side in absolute silence, the awkward atmosphere makes the journey feel incredibly long and painful. While math problems always have clear solutions, the young man realizes that human relationships are far too complex. Stepping out of the elevator, a loud voice suddenly calls his name and snaps him back to reality. Ji-hai happily asks about his schedule before he politely reminds her to grade some test papers later in the evening. The young instructor freezes in shock when she mentions that the strict team leader wants to see him at 7. He nervously asks if their boss seemed upset today, but his helper simply teases him about getting in trouble. Noting how happy she looks today, the teacher quickly scolds his lazy assistant to get back to work. While the teenager complains, the young man smiles because her expressive face always makes her incredibly easy to read. Entering the office, the young man learns that a student named Yeon Ho needs to schedule some makeup classes. Since his schedule is fully packed for midterms, the beautiful boss suggests doing private lessons instead. The concerned instructor wonders if they might get caught, but she simply tells him to be careful with the plan. Feeling relieved that they only talked about work, the mentor leaves, while the boss tries to forget about yesterday. After finishing his work late at night, the tired teacher organizes his desk and checks a sweet text from his housemate. Just as he prepares to go home to crash for the night, a sudden notification bubble pops up on his phone. His white-haired boss calls to explain that she accidentally left her necessary daily medication back at the academy. He grabs the envelope and nervously asks if her health will get worse if she does not take the prescription. Lying sick in bed, the weak woman admits she also wants to talk about their awkward encounter from the day before. The worried instructor immediately asks for her address before promising to grab a taxi to deliver the medicine. Arriving at the quiet building, the young man walks down the hallway to find room number 607. Arriving at the door, the young man knocks, but instead of opening, she texts him the passcode to enter. He slowly opens the door, only to be immediately hit by a terrible smell that reminds him of a garbage dump. Looking down, he is completely shocked to see piles of messy trash filling her entire apartment floor. While trying to walk through the dark room, the clumsy teacher suddenly trips over a pile of trash and falls down. A weak voice suddenly calls his name as he finds his beautiful boss lying down and looking very sick. Getting extremely flustered by the close distance, the embarrassed young man quickly apologizes for his panic. Looking up weakly, the sick woman asks him for one more favor so she can finally take her daily medicine. Sitting up weakly, the sick woman softly asks if he can bring her a glass of water. Even though it feels like an abuse of power, he silently prepares the drink because she looks so pitiful. He gets surprised when he realizes she needs heavy antidepressants just to be able to sleep at night. The quiet woman explains that she must get a new prescription every 2 weeks to function properly. She admits she ran away yesterday because she was terrified of him finding out about her therapy visits. After taking a quick sip of water, she sighingly admits she ended up getting exposed anyway by forgetting her meds. Looking around the messy apartment, the worried teacher asks how long she has been living in this terrible state. The team leader explains that she recently started seeing a doctor because she constantly feels exhausted after work. She admits that she has been dealing with intense pressure and anxiety ever since she was a young student. The sick boss weakly thanks him for the visit before quietly telling him that she will pay for his taxi home. Watching her rest, the kind young teacher decides to help by asking her where she keeps the plastic trash bags. The determined man rolls up his sleeves and quickly fills up 3 giant bags with all the garbage on the floor. Sitting side by side, the surprised woman asks why he is going out of his way to help her like this. He confesses that he always saw her as a flawless worker and never realized she was dealing with so much pain. This heavy conversation instantly reminds the worried teacher of his cute housemate, who suffers from a similar pain. Before leaving the apartment, the kind instructor tells his sick boss to stay strong and take care of herself. Walking home under the dark night sky, he looks at the medicine bag and suddenly thinks of his own housemate. Pulling out his phone, the young man gets absolutely shocked to see countless missed calls from the anxious teenager. Feeling like he is totally screwed, the worried mentor quickly rushes back home and slowly peeks inside his dark apartment. He lets out a relieved sigh while thinking that he can just explain the whole situation to her tomorrow morning. The lights suddenly click on, and the terrified teacher screams when he sees the young girl standing right there. The tearful girl stands in the doorway holding her toy while complaining that he ignored all of her urgent phone calls. The young man quickly apologizes and explains that he was only late because he had to deliver some medicine to their boss. Hearing this, the teenager gets highly curious and asks why the strict leader needed special pills in the middle of the night. He lies that it was just a dental painkiller, which makes the girl happily assume their boss always frowns from a toothache. Feeling extremely relieved by this easy excuse, the tired mentor suggests that they finally head to bed to get some rest. The next day at the academy, the busy team leader holds a major meeting to announce the successful parent orientation. She instructs a newly appointed worker to audit her afternoon lecture and learn the official homework rules. Watching her lead the room, the young man thinks she looks flawless, but he cannot forget how fragile she actually is. Knowing her vulnerable side makes the young teacher feel deep sympathy, and he decides to keep her secret safe. After finishing the weekly meeting at the academy, the beautiful boss asks the young instructor to follow her. Standing on the quiet stairs, she hands him a warm cup of coffee to thank him for helping her out the night before. The nervous woman asks for another favor and begs him to keep her therapy visits a secret from their coworkers. The kind teacher immediately agrees to keep his lips sealed while feeling glad he made up an excuse for his housemate. She calmly suggests they head back to prepare for their upcoming lectures as the busy workday officially begins. The elegant woman silently thanks her coworker because having someone open up to finally makes her feel at ease. The handsome teacher mentions that he has never seen his boss smile before and tells her to head back inside. The stairwell door suddenly opens and his young housemate appears carrying a heavy box of materials. The young man asks his helper why she took the stairs instead of riding the crowded elevator. Looking at the cups, the teenager gets extremely suspicious about them sharing a private coffee break. Sensing the strange tension, the mentor asks if she needs something while the girl looks down in silence. Changing her dark expression in a split second, the girl puts on a giant fake smile and says she is ready to work. While grading test papers, the girl tries to convince herself that they are just returning simple favors. Standing by the copier, the young girl tries to focus on her tasks and tells herself that coffee is just a normal treat. Her coworker named Ajin suddenly approaches and asks her to stop shaking her leg like a loud construction drill. Sitting down together, the friend says teachers rarely hang out and adds that her past workplace was incredibly cold. The girl gets completely flustered when her friend suddenly asks if she is secretly dating the handsome teacher. Blushing deeply, the teenager quickly explains that their bond is just a special relationship where she relies on him. The coworker tells her to watch out for a girl named Senna, who loves meddling in other people's love lives. She then gets up to leave because her short break is finally over, which leaves the young assistant alone. The young girl gets incredibly jealous while wondering if her handsome mentor is secretly dating their beautiful boss. While waiting for her ride back home, she gets frustrated because a simple coffee break bothers her so much. The teenager compares herself to the young team leader, who is both incredibly successful and absolutely gorgeous. Looking at her reflection in the mirror, she sadly notes her short height and complete lack of physical curves. Checking her tiny bank balance, she realizes she has almost no money and only completed middle school. Lying in bed, she imagines the handsome teacher preferring a classy adult instead of someone like her. Feeling completely defeated, the poor girl buries her face in her plush toy and screams in frustration. Lying in bed, the sad teenager regrets that she failed her sweet promise of becoming a successful adult. Looking out the window, she notices a sudden rainstorm and realizes that her beloved mentor left his umbrella behind. The girl immediately imagines running to his rescue so he will reward her with multiple warm hugs every single day. Shaking off her silly fantasy, she giggles while remembering that he promised to head straight home after his class. Heavy rain quickly begins to pour over the dark city streets as footsteps splash through the cold puddles. Holding her umbrella, the excited teenager waits outside around the exact time he usually returns from work. Suddenly, her eyes widen in pure shock when she notices a dark umbrella moving toward her through the heavy storm. Through the heavy storm, she spots her favorite teacher walking closely under a shared umbrella with his gorgeous boss. Staring in absolute shock, the heartbroken teenager feels her world crumble as she watches the two together. Dropping her umbrella, the crying girl suddenly screams in sadness and runs away into the dark night. Quickly handing the umbrella to his boss, the worried teacher immediately chases after his fleeing friend. Standing alone under the rain, the team leader wonders how the young assistant even knew he lacked an umbrella. Getting completely drenched, the frantic young man struggles to find the girl as her phone keeps cutting off. A sudden voice from the shadows calls out his name and makes the exhausted instructor turn around in surprise. He turns around to see his student Taerin, who explains she is just visiting the local convenience store. Without wasting any time, the frantic teacher begs to borrow her umbrella in exchange for canceling tomorrow's homework. Meanwhile, the rain continues to pour as a heartbroken Ji-hye sits on a bench and worries about her beloved teacher. She feels like a complete nuisance who is only getting in the way of his potential relationship with the gorgeous boss. The sad teenager even imagines herself as an abandoned pet on the street who has absolutely nowhere left to go. Trying to gather her strength, she wipes away her tears and decides she must focus on surviving this cold, stormy night. She tries using her phone to find help, but the terrible internet signal only shows glitched nonsense on the screen. Looking at her dying phone screen, the desperate teenager realizes she must contact her internet friend right away. Typing quickly, the girl asks the online buddy if she can crash at her place for just a single night. The friend sends a picture of a messy room and asks for her current location before agreeing to help. She gets confused when the girl suddenly tells her to sit tight at the park instead of coming to meet her. Suddenly, her phone screen turns completely black and leaves her screaming in absolute panic. Standing alone in the freezing rain, the heartbroken teenager feels like her entire world is falling apart. Clutching her knees, she decides to wait at the playground because she promised to stay put. Sitting alone under the heavy rain, the wet girl starts to doubt if anyone will actually come to save her. Suddenly, a very familiar voice calls out her name and tells her to come out of her hiding spot immediately. Peeking out, she gets shocked to see her beloved teacher standing right in front of her with a wet umbrella. Tears run down her face as she sadly claims that a useless person like her is just getting in his way. The young man walks forward and tells her to stop talking nonsense because he truly cares about her safety. He asks why she thinks he ran through the storm to find her and admits that she is sometimes a little tiring. The mentor comforts her by explaining that her presence makes his home feel warmer and reminds her of their old promise. He refuses to let her go before seeing her succeed as this chaotic episode finally ends under the heavy spring rain. While heading back, the handsome teacher asks if she really ran away because of a silly misunderstanding about his boss. Although he wants to tease her for being dramatic, he sincerely thanks his cute housemate for trying to put him first. Looking incredibly cute, the quiet girl blushes while the cold rain continues to pour over the giant city buildings. Holding the nice umbrella he borrowed from his student earlier, the young instructor prepares to start walking again. He suddenly points out that the young teenager actually has her own dry umbrella inside her bag. Smiling mischievously, the goth girl asks to share his umbrella instead and leaves him stunned with her childish logic. Walking closely under the rain, the young girl feels incredibly happy to share the umbrella with her favorite mentor. She suddenly remembers her mother and realizes that her kind teacher is completely different from her toxic family. The teenager confidently believes that her beloved host will never abandon her as they walk back home together. The next day, the young man stands in his kitchen and prepares a warm meal while thinking about their situation. He brings over a hot tray and wonders why she was the one who caught a cold since he got much more wet in the rain. The sick girl slowly pulls down her mask and cutely opens her mouth because she wants him to feed her directly. Feeling deeply annoyed, the teacher decides to feed her, but the teenager complains that the soup is too salty. During the rainy night, the teacher checks a local internet cafe, but the worker has not seen his missing housemate. Suddenly, his boss calls his phone, and he admits that he still has not found the girl anywhere. Lying sick in bed, the white-haired woman surprisingly suggests checking a specific park nearby. Arriving at the park under his umbrella, he actually spots the teenager and wonders how his supervisor knew. The next day at work, the sick teenager quickly takes her cold medicine before starting her daily shift. Watching her dedication, the strict team leader warmly praises the young assistant for showing up today. The boss tells her to keep wearing a mask, while the assistant silently blames her mentor for her cold. Handing over a warm drink, the thoughtful woman kindly reminds her to stay healthy and take care of herself. Giving her a warm drink, the mentor tells her to head home safely, but she accidentally mentions seeing him later. Hearing this slip, the sharp boss gets confused, so they frantically lie about private tutoring for her exams. Seeing both of them sweat profusely, the strict team leader immediately notices how nervous they look. At 10 o'clock that evening, the white-haired woman asks why he is rushing to leave right on the dot again. Sweating nervously, the flustered instructor claims that he must hurry off to start his next tutoring class. Staring at him coldly, the perceptive leader bluntly calls out his weak lie without hesitation. She feels completely certain that they are hiding something after observing their suspicious behavior lately. Looking directly into his eyes, the boss formally requests a private meeting to discuss his strange secret. Sitting outside the shop, the young man apologizes for his lie while his boss gently replies that everyone hides secrets. Sitting at the table, the team leader shares her therapy visits and explains her constant anxiety about people finding out. Looking at her sad expression, the kind instructor feels bad when she apologizes for making the topic too heavy. To cheer her up, he suggests becoming secret partners who cover for each other whenever someone gets into trouble. Tossing both empty drink cans into a far bin, the young man shows off his skills while his boss claps in amazement. Holding out his pinky finger, the handsome teacher asks if she wants to make a promise and accept his friendly deal. Holding out his pinky finger, the young instructor promises to keep her secret completely safe. Relieved by his words, the elegant team leader agrees to the friendly deal. However, she completely shocks him by revealing that she knows about his living situation with the teenager. Even though he panics, his perceptive boss begins listing specific private details about their daily routine. Freaked out by her exact knowledge, the young man gets confused until she pulls out her phone display. The scene shifts to the apartment where the dramatic teenager sits alone in her dark bedroom. It turns out the young girl has been constantly posting detailed stories about their home life online. While waiting alone at home, the anxious girl receives a text from her host explaining that he will be late. Hearing the front door unlock, the excited teenager instantly jumps up with joy to greet her favorite mentor. The kind teacher brings home delicious chicken skewers for a late-night snack, making her super excited to eat. Suddenly, the young man calls her out by her secret online handle, instantly catching her completely off guard. He points out the exact social media posts where she continuously logs their daily home life for everyone to read. He drops another major bomb by revealing that her online friend is actually their strict white-haired boss. The terrified teenager realizes in horror that their supervisor now knows they are living together under one roof. Echoing through the night sky, the angry teacher demands she delete the account while the girl loudly begs for mercy. Inside the office, the boss looks for her assistant to print 50 copies of class materials. Trembling in fear, the embarrassed teenager hides under a desk to avoid facing her superior. Later at home, the dramatic girl hands over a formal resignation letter that her mentor instantly rejects. Clinging to his leg, she cries about her secrets being exposed while he scolds her online habits. Looking up, she listens as her mentor suggests using their online connection to get closer with her boss. Kneeling down, the kind teacher encourages the young girl to be brave and face people, instead of running away. Back at the academy, the instructor finishes his lecture and invites his happy class to a monthly pizza party. When it is time to fetch the pizza, the young teacher gets a sudden message from his supervisor. The boss asks him to pick up the food because their assistant has been intensely avoiding her lately. Understanding the awkward situation, the young man agrees to take the company car to grab the order. Suddenly, the energetic assistant bursts into the room and insists on going with the team leader instead. While driving together, the elegant boss gently brings up how the teenager has been hiding from her at work. She reassures her helper that seeing each other online posts goes both ways, so there is no need to feel embarrassed. The boss confesses that despite her perfect work image, she actually lives an empty and lonely life at home. The team leader sadly wonders if needing daily medication for her mental health makes her seem completely pathetic. Hearing this, the teenager strongly disagrees and explains that getting help for mental pain is totally normal. This conversation triggers a dark flashback of her toxic mother yelling at her for wanting therapy as a student. Her strict parent accused her of ruining all her future success while the poor girl sobbed in frustration. The manipulative mother even brought up her favorite tutor to pressure the poor student into enduring the pain. Returning to the present day, the kind assistant sincerely wishes her boss a full and healthy recovery. Hearing those comforting words, the white-haired woman smiles warmly at her thoughtful assistant. Blushing deeply, the young assistant thanks her boss for the kind words and admits that she feels a bit embarrassed. While riding together, the teenager asks about her therapy session and learns that the doctor recommended finding a new hobby. When the excited girl tries to suggest her favorite video games, the elegant woman quickly rejects the idea. When asked if anything made her heart race lately, the boss recalls a close moment with the instructor and admits someone did. The team leader teases that it is a secret before they finally arrive back at the academy with the fresh pizzas. During the party, a nosy student tries to steal his seat until her friends quickly drag her away to leave him alone. While handing out sodas to the class, the happy assistant blushes with joy while standing right next to her favorite mentor. Suddenly, the elegant white-haired boss approaches his table and politely asks if she can take the empty seat beside him. The white-haired leader kindly offers her a drink, and the happy assistant eagerly accepts with a cute smile. Watching them interact, the young man feels deeply relieved and hopes they will get along without any more drama. Later on, the amazed instructor watches his former student devour massive amounts of food sent over by his sister. When his sister texts about visiting, the clever host asks her to courier the groceries instead to avoid any mess. Unlocking his front door that evening, the tired man calls out to check if anything chaotic happened while he was out. His jaw drops in total shock when the stylish teenager suddenly steps out to show off her brand new outfit. The happy teenager proudly shows off her new outfit while he notices a massive pile of delivery boxes behind her. While checking the boxes, he accidentally opens one containing her new undergarments, which leaves them both deeply flustered. Before he can go wash up, the loud electronic sound of the front door passcode breaking the silence startles them. Terrified of getting caught, the panicked instructor orders her to hide, and she immediately dives right into his bed. The front door opens to reveal his older sister, who unexpectedly dropped by to deliver some delicious home-cooked food. Diving under the blanket next to the girl, he quickly lies that he is resting early because of a sudden cold. Even though his sister offers to cook for him, he nervously tells her to leave the food and head home right away. While clinging tightly under the warm blanket, the blushing girl secretly wishes his sister visits more often. Heading into the kitchen, the caring woman puts away the extra food she made for her sick brother. Her eyes widen when she notices a giant stack of women's clothing delivery boxes near the bed. Connecting the clues, the excited sister suddenly asks if he secretly enjoys cross-dressing in his free time. Thinking he hid under the blanket to hide his outfits, the desperate man pretends she guessed correctly. The mischievous sister cutely asks to see his new clothes so she can gain inspiration for her novel. Promising to keep his strange secret hidden from their mother, the sister leaves the flustered man in total shock. Suddenly, the older sister notices a dark red stain spreading across the blanket and panics. Ripping the blanket away to stop the bleeding, she gets shocked when the blushing teenager pops out to greet her. After a loud scream echoes through the apartment, the visitor finally learns about their temporary living arrangement. The jealous sister feels deeply betrayed and complains that her brother refused to move in with her in the past. Unable to stand her constant nagging, the protective mentor firmly defends his student and tells his sister to leave. Once the front door locks, the curious teenager asks if his dramatic older sister actually writes novels for a living. Turning around to check on his friend, the kind teacher gently asks if her sudden nosebleed was caused by overwork. The young instructor points out that clinging under the blanket officially used up her single hug allowance for the month. While she complains about her lost hug, the strict host orders her to organize the delivery boxes and prepare for bed.